In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. It's funny how the last line of today's gospel really resonates with us, as it says, we have seen strange things today. So it's nice to see everybody in their face masks. I appreciate that. So, one of the things I want to talk about today is about forces that are acting inside of us. Right? And there are two forces that are acting inside of us, whether we realize it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, or whether or not we're conscious of it or not. And these two forces that are acting inside of us are, one, a force of individuality, and then secondly, kind of opposing it, is a force of togetherness. Right? Of individuality and togetherness. Because there are times when we want to be alone and separate and away from everybody else. But part of our human nature, too, is that we also crave togetherness. Right? And our understanding and how these come to play in our lives really begin to form at such a young age and are developed throughout our years with our family of origin. So the family that we grew up with, mom, dad, brothers, sisters. Right? And we see that in families, that we see sometimes individual family members need to get away and like to be a bit separate from the other family members. And other family members may want everybody to be together and they become very enmeshed with one another. Right? So we see these forces of individuality and separateness. Or, individuality and separate and togetherness, And a lot of times what we see is that when situations become highly charged in families, certain individuals in the family may prefer a lot of individuality. Right? When things explode at home and people are getting upset at each other, sometimes we can kind of creep into our own little cocoon. And it's how we deal with it. We don't know how to be in the situation. We don't know how to be in stressful situations with our family members. We don't know how to deal with the anxieties of managing a family. We don't know how to be together. And so what happens is that we push towards, or we separate, and we become more individualistic. And we have to deal with these forces throughout our entire lives. And we don't really gain individuality when we move out of the house and become established, because what we're talking about are interpersonal skills. Our ability to be in any situation and learn to have a healthy balance of being both an individual and being together. Right? I'll give you another example to help bring this idea out. And clearly these are not my ideas. These come from a psychologist in the 1950s, 60s. His name is Murray Bowen, who really began to piece this together for people. But when we look at a church community, right, a church family, that sometimes it is difficult to be part of a church family. That sometimes we get charged. That emotions get the best of us in our church family. And when that happens, and we have a hard time learning to respect differences of opinions, learning to respect different cultures, learning to respect different ages and demographics within a church, right? Because when you bring all that together, it can be stressful. Anxieties can ride high. Emotions can get the best of us. But part of being a family is learning to take all of that and balance it, to not be so reactive to the situation, to where we can hang in there, discuss, though our opinions may be different, we can somewhat see, or we can somewhat not necessarily see eye to eye, but we can learn to appreciate that you are different from me, and just because you are different from me doesn't mean you're bad and I'm good. We are just different. Right? So there's this idea, right, that when we are able to not let our emotions get the best of us and hang in the situation together, what we have is this understanding of being differentiated. Right? I can be differentiated from I can appreciate that you're different than me. That the way that you think, the way that you see, the way that you speak, your views are different than me. I may not like them, okay? But I can respect them. And I can respect you. On the other side of the spectrum, if we are poorly differentiated, what happens is that when we get into an emotionally charged situation, we tend to be very reactive to the situation. My emotions get the best of me. I start yelling, you start yelling, I can't be with you, you can't be with me, and what happens is we separate. Right now, we live in a society and a time that really caters and allows people to be very individualistic. Right? That it's just much easier, or so we think it's much easier for us to be individualistic. Right? That I don't want to change the way I think, I don't want to be challenged in the way I think, and when I, either go to church or when I go home over the holidays, it's just really difficult. And it's so frustrating. So I just prefer to be myself. Right? We separate. And that's a big problem because what we see, especially nowadays, across our society, across our nation, is that people are really having a hard time being together. People are having a hard time being together. Now, the reason why I bring this up, okay, because I do think that we have a society, and we are living in an age where we are almost grooming individuals who are poorly differentiated. They really have a hard time being in groups, being in families. Okay, whether it be your church family, whether it be your family of origin, the family that you grew up with, whether it be your family at work. I mean, we have to deal with these issues at work too, and in our classrooms, where we have to work closely with other people. And sometimes we don't know how to do that. We get really charged, and so we separate. So we live in a society where we're becoming very individualistic. Or another way of looking at it, we've become very poorly differentiated. We don't know how to be around other people and to be myself while being connected. And I highlight that because this gospel tells us, at least to me, really emphasizes how it is important for us to learn as best as possible to become differentiated people. Because what I'm commonly seeing is that I find individuals who used to be associated with church, who used to be associated with a group of friends, who used to be close to their family, and now they're just sitting like a lone wolf out there. They're trying to figure out life by themselves. And that's when somebody becomes very, very sick. When they're out by themselves. When they don't know how to be part of a family. When they don't know or haven't learned over time how to be differentiated, which allows them to be together with others. Too many people are sitting outside by themselves. Too many people are sitting outside by themselves, paralyzed, just like the man in today's Gospel, Luke chapter 5. Paralyzed, lying out of bed. But the problem is they don't see that they're paralyzed. And they don't see that they're paralyzed because they don't have four other people reflecting back to them that they're broken. They don't have other people to look at where he's realizing, I'm laying on the ground and I'm paralyzed, but that's not normal. What's normal is that other people are walking around. Sadly, today, too many people live out by themselves, paralyzed interpersonally and spiritually, and emotionally and mentally. They're paralyzed, but they don't know it. Why? Because they've distanced themselves from everybody else. They're not challenged to reflect internally. And they don't want to see what is normal. They don't want to see what is healthy. So they're paralyzed. And it's a really, really dangerous place to be. Because when we look at this story, yes, this man was paralyzed, but he knew he was paralyzed because there was a sense of togetherness. There's a sense that he was sick, but he had 4 friends who weren't. And he relied on these 4 friends to cover where he was deficient. He relied on 4 friends to bring him to the one place that he could find healing, which was Christ. But he had to allow them in. He had to allow them to come close, to see that he was sick, to see that he was in need, to see that he wasn't well. He needed to allow them to come in. But people who are highly or poorly differentiated don't want people to come in. Don't want people to see that they're sick. Can't go to church. I'm going through a hard time. Somebody picks up on it, they're just going to talk. It's been really difficult during the pandemic. Everybody stay away. My ugly side's out. Everybody's got an ugly side. Everybody has disease. Everybody struggles. Everybody in their own way is paralyzed. And everybody, because we are all paralyzed in our own way, needs other people around us. We need our friends. We need our church communities. We need our friends. We need our spiritual mentors and spiritual guides. Because it's these guides who reflect back to us that we're sick. Only if we let them in. Only if we stop thinking that we need to be away from it. But rather we need to bring people in closer. Because when we bring people in closer, not only do they reflect back to us our own sicknesses, but if we bring in the right people, okay? If we bring in the right people to our lives, what these people should do for us is exactly what these 4 men did for this paralyzed man. Is that these people should bring us to the feet of Christ. Yes, we have a choice as to who we allow in to our lives. And just because we've been burned before by maybe somebody we've brought up, doesn't mean we close the door. It means we learn from our lessons, but realize that in order for us to ever get healthy, in order for us to ever be healed, eventually we got to bring somebody else in. And that's when we have to learn from our lessons and bring in the right people, bring in the right mentors, bring in the right friends, join the right community. And those communities all should focus on bringing us to the feet of Christ. And that's where we find healing. Because in the presence of Christ, all diseases are brought to the light. All sicknesses are exposed. And so they have a chance of being healed. But if we continue to internalize it, because it's too difficult to be around others, we lay paralyzed for way too much of our lives. And we miss out on healing. And so it's vitally important that not only as individuals do we allow the right people into our lives, healthy influences into our lives who will bring us to Christ, but we also, at one point in our lives, will play that person for somebody else. One day you'll be the paralyzed man, and another day you'll be one of the 4 people lowering somebody in. You play both roles. We all play both roles. We have to know what it is to be paralyzed, and we know that by the people that we bring in. And when we are healed, or going or getting better, we get to be that other person for somebody else. And it's incumbent on us to fight for them. Fight the crowds, lower them through the roof, and bring them to Christ. That's what makes us a family. That's what brings us close together. That's what brings true healing. True healing does not happen when we separate. True healing comes when people are close. And when we draw close to Christ, that's when healing happens. And so, as we struggle to allow people, understand that it's important. But also challenge yourselves to allow the right people. To allow a church community to come in. To allow a spiritual mentor. A friend who is really grounded. You know, there's so many different people that we can allow to come in. But we kind of hold the key. Right? We hold the key to allow people in. And when we do, we see our sickness, but we also allow ourselves to be brought to Christ for true healing. And as we come back slowly out of this quarantining process where everybody has been individual, trying to make it through, there's a big urgency, so to speak, of bringing us back together to be a family. Because all of us are paralyzed, and all of us need Christ. But in order to do that, people have to come in, and people bring us to Christ. And He offers true healing. So we'll meditate on that just for a couple moments, and glory be to God.